Welcome to the Photography Kitchen, and hard to believe that we are now up to episode 12. Seems like I just started doing these. Now, I hope you're having fun. I'm having fun doing them with you. And we've got some interesting stuff to do tonight. So let's get right into it. Of course, I have more prepared than I can share with you. So for our hors d'oeuvre, something really simple. But I thought it was also an interesting kind of image. Let's get out of full screen here. And it's just some fencing. And this was actually at a lighthouse. And something I'm hoping to pursue over the next couple of weeks is to look for some things that aren't the obvious subject. To look for things that for some reason talk to me. And I thought this was interesting. And if we look at the histogram up top, you can see I wanted to, this was called shooting to the right, where you do push the exposure to the right, even though there's no pure whites in here. But that does give you a lot of headroom to work with your shadows. And it does cut down on noise as well. I had already run the noise reduction program on here. But if we look at the develop module, everything else is right where we started. So let's go ahead and Command apostrophe and make a virtual copy. And this could be a really simple edit. And then I want to talk about the composition on it. So texture, yes, I want to add some texture. Let's add some clarity. Well, that's helped a lot already. So with that, let's add some dehaze, which brings some saturation and deeper shadows. And we'll add some vibrance and overall saturation. And I think I want to bring the highlights down a little bit, not a lot. Now, the horizon with the ocean in the background is slightly skewed, but it serves an important place as well. Let's bring up the cropping tool, which is R, and I'm just going to go down to the lower right corner just so I can see a line, because there's not a clearly defined horizon. It's obviously blurry. I'm just going to take that line in the crop tool and use that rather than use the actual line tool. And watch what happens if we were actually to get rid of the blue, the horizon rather. The image just doesn't work because you don't really have a sense of where it is. If I undo that, you get to see what's so important about having that little bit of sky. We could make it less. We could bring it down a little bit. But that little bit of sky is very important to tell you where you are. Now, obviously, I shot this at shallow depth of field. And there are some people that have complained about the OM cameras that you can't do shallow depth of field because Micro Four Thirds sensors do have more depth of field than a full frame, for example. But if I hit I, and we take a look at the settings, you can see I'm at f4. And since I am relatively close to the fencing, the background gets very blurred. If you wanted to, you could blur it more, but I don't really see a reason. But I do want to darken and perhaps change the tone of the fence a little bit more to give it some separation from the background. So let's come up to our masks and see if Lightroom sees it as the subject. And it mostly did. So let's click on Add, get the brush, make sure Auto Mask is on. I'm going to make the brush size just about about the size of the fencing itself. I'm going to click once, drag down, go down to the bottom, hold down the Shift key, and click. It's okay if we get a little bit of the background for what we're doing. It really doesn't matter. So what I'm doing is I'm clicking once, holding down Shift, going up to where I want it to go. And what that does is it draws a straight line. And all we're doing right now is selecting, basically creating a mask. And if I decide I got a little bit messy in there, hold down the Alt key, that turns it to a minus, and just go around the areas that you thought, well, maybe I got a little too much background in there. Oh, I missed one. There's one over here too. Let's get that one. Again, click, hold down Shift, and that's fine. So what does it need? Well, it's a little bit too bright, I think. I think we need to darken it up a smidge. And it looks a little Band-Aid colored. So it either needs to be warmer or cooler. So let's add some warmth. There's yellow. there's blue. And in this case, the blue to me is the answer. And why? Because it's different than the background. Even though blue typically is a color that recedes, in this case, it has the effect of separating. And since we have this chosen, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to bring the blacks down. I want the little borders to be darker, which will allow me to also then bring the exposure back up and make it a little more contrasty. And as I do that, I think, gee, maybe I want it even a little cooler. Because if I don't want it to mimic, see, if I make it yellow, that kind of mimics the background, it gets lost. But by making it blue, or putting blue into it to neutralize the yellow, we end up going there. And let's just do a simple under our effects. We'll do a -12. Actually, -12 is a little too dark. Yeah, maybe just, you know what? Since there's a natural shadow at the bottom, I'm not going to do the vignette. I'm going to turn it off. Just going to reset it here. I think what we're going to do is we're going to do it manually a bit. So let's just get a brush, which I'm just going to cut to the chase and hit the K key, and I'm going to turn off auto mask, and I'm going to select these corners just there, because this is already dark. It just naturally is from the scene, and I'm just going to bring them down a little bit, just a smidge, just to bring it down a little bit from the rest. And you know what? I don't think there's really any reason to do anything more with it. Let's take a look at full screen. There's our original file, and there's what we did for it. Again, it's actually still trying to draw in. Come on, catch up. I'm waiting for the sharpness to appear. I don't know why it's taking so long, but I'll let it go for now. But I just wanted you to see that, because now we're going to move on. We're going to turn, actually where was this fence? If I remember right, this is behind Highland Light, which is on Cape Cod. And this is not that light. This is Nauset Light, which is the lighthouse from the Cape Cod potato chip bag. And if we look at the histogram, it looks like all these whites are gone, but look at the histogram. It's telling us, no, they're fine. So that means we can fix this pretty easily. Let's just go ahead and bring the highlights all the way down. And we'll bring the shadows up. I'm going to turn the exposure down a little bit and bring the shadows up a bit more. And I'm still not thrilled with what it's doing for the clouds. So let's go ahead and select the sky and see what it comes up with. That's pretty good that it was able to ignore the white of the tower, the lighthouse. Let's scroll down and add some dehaze to that, see if that helps. That's helping. But I'm not thrilled with the color of the foreground now. It looks a little too yellow, and I think the lighthouse is slightly skewed as well. Let's fix the color on the bottom part. Since we have the sky selected right now, let's just click on the 3 dots by the mask and tell it to invert the mask. Oh, sorry, I want to duplicate and invert the mask. I want to leave that one alone. And let's add some, you can see it's bleeding into the sky a bit. Let's go ahead and click on subtract and tell it to subtract the sky. It didn't do a perfect job. That got rid of more of it. So I thought it was a little too yellow, which means it needs some blue. So let's put some blue in there, and that's looking better. I'm still not thrilled with this area, though. I think it's a little dark, but let's concentrate on the lighthouse first. As I'm looking at it, it looks a little skewed. So let's hit the R key and see. Let's rotate this around. And yeah, if you take a look right underneath the walkway, these should be even across here. And where it was, there's even. And also you can see that the top of the lighthouse is now straight as well. And just, you can see how much was that? 1/10 of a degree, and that's enough to throw us off. So now let's select the subject. So we'll go up to new mask and select subject and see what it gives us. Gives us the light and the house. That's pretty good. Did it get some of the sky again? Yes. So we'll click on subtract the sky. I don't know why it can see the sky and then not subtract it. And it still didn't get it in here. So we're going to have to subtract manually. So let's get a brush and we'll make it smaller. And let's just choose this area in between. Actually, what we're going to do isn't really going to affect the white of the lighthouse. I want to darken up because the lighthouse is a little overexposed. I think something like that, maybe some more contrast. And as we do that, it needs to be brightened up. Now the color temperature of the lighthouse looks a little off to me as well. If we add yellow to it, no. Blue, no. Let's try green and magenta. Green, magenta. It actually needs a little magenta. See how that cleaned up the white? That's nice when you have something white because you can visualize what a neutral white is. It actually needed magenta to make it white. All right, so now let's see if the landscape mask will let us get to the foreground by itself. So let's create a new mask and choose landscape. And let's just choose, oh, interesting. It sees it as mountains. Fine, we'll go with mountains, that's fine. So that's all I really want, I just want that. And it gave us the mountains. There's a little path of dirt here, that's fine. Exposure-wise, let's open that up a little bit. And I'm still not sure of the color temperature on this. Let's add some blue, some yellow, blue, yellow. This is a tough call here. I think it needs blue. I think the yellow's too much. But we can add some saturation and add some life to it as well. And as I'm looking at it, what do you think about the sky? I think the sky might be overdone a little bit. I think we need to turn down the dehaze, and I think we may need to have, use a different filter for this. I'm going to check. I'm just going to delete this and start again. Let's just delete that one. All right. Let's see. What else is wrong with this? Let's look at it composition-wise. The lighthouse is kind of dangerously in the center. We need to move it to one side or the other. Now, typically when I'm deciding which side to put a lighthouse on, it depends on what's the brightest. On here, since it's kind of not getting direct sun, that's a tough call. But I'm going to call this side to be the brighter side of the two, even though it's getting light on here. I'm seeing this as being slightly brighter. So I like to put the brighter side. Let's hit the crop tool. I usually like to put the brighter side closer to the edge, or further from the edge rather, because the brighter side has a tendency to stop you from leaving the image. In this case, it's such a small difference that I don't think it matters. Now, notice also as we do the cropping that we get rid of the stuff it doesn't need to have. We've got the lighthouse on one of our strong grid points here. It does need a vignette, but I had mentioned the Nik filters, and I think that might be the answer. Let's first adjust the sky, though. Let's go to Color Mixer and get our eyedropper. I think the sky for this lighting is just a little bit off, and you can see it's slightly towards the cyan. Here's the upside down triangle of the blue. If I wanted a pure blue, it'd have to be in here a little bit more, and I think that's better. I also would like to see a little bit more contrast and darkness on the bridge, on the building. So let's make sure auto mask is on. I want to get this roof a little darker. So let's just get the building and let's darken that up. I'm going to add a little contrast, bring the exposure down. Maybe add the blacks in and then actually open up the highlights. There we go, that's better. Okay, so now we've got our lighthouse tower off to one side. Let's see what our friends Nik can do. So we're going to go to Photo, Edit In, and here is the new Nik filters. I still have my older ones in here, which don't work anymore. I'm going to delete those. And let's try Viveza. And while we're here, I'm also going to try one other thing. But let's get this one done first. And I do find that when I'm preparing images to go out to print, a lot of time they're going to go through this software. Because the thing about it, if you really want to add pop, is to add some structure. And just look what that does right there. Saturation wise, maybe a smidge. But one of the other most useful tools in this is the warmth slider. Sometimes you look, the color's not quite where you want it. Well, you can drag the warmth left and right and see if that fixes it. And it's pretty minor. I just got it 4% over. But let's look at the before and after by dragging the slider. And you can see how everything kind of got cleaned up and a little pop added. And I think that works a lot better. So let's click apply on that. That then creates a completely new file. And now I will add the vignette here. And the reason I always do my vignette here is because the crop follows the image. Now, while we're here, let's do this one again. Actually, I'm going to take the one we just did and do it. Let's go and take a look at Edit in Silver Effects. Something that is interesting to try when you have an image that's giving you color fits for some reason is to see how it looks as a black and white. Let's move the slider over. And I'm going to just drag down and see if one of these looks right. Let's see what high structure looks like. Kind of interesting. And again, for any of you who ever shot black and white, you have the ability to change the sensitivity. So for example, if I want to change, see, I can affect just the reds. And if I wanted to make the blues a little darker, as if I was doing like a yellow or orange, and let's see the green, should they be darker or lighter? Yeah, it's kind of a split. But look again, look what happened just from doing that preset plus with the sliders a little bit. That makes for a pretty nifty black and white. So I'm going to apply that, and then we're going to do one more thing. We're going to jump kind of into the deep end of Photoshop here. So there's our black and white. Here's the edit we just did with the color. I'm going to select both of these. So here's our two images, and go to Photo, Edit in, and tell it to open as layers in Photoshop. I don't want to edit in Photoshop. I want to open as layers, which is not that image. Give it a sec. Come on, open up. There we go. There's the black and white layer. And where's the other one? Come on. It's trying. It's trying. It's not doing it. All right, fine. If you want to be that way, we'll just manually do it. I don't know what the failure was there. I'll just hit Command E to send that into Photoshop, so they'll both be open. There it is. So I'm going to do a Command A, select all, Command C to copy it, and then I'm going to Command V here, and here it is underneath the black and white. And one of the cool things you can do with the black and white is adjust the blending mode. So here it is normal. It's just completely going through. Well, we could bring the opacity down a little bit and see what that does. It makes a little bit of an interesting effect at 16%. You can see if I turn it on and off what it does. A little different effect, but the fun happens on these two. Overlay, which will increase the contrast a lot. You can see there's the effect of overlay. Or probably best for doing black and whites is luminosity. And if we bring that up, watch what happens when I turn this on and off. Look at how the luminosity mask really adds a lot of pop to the image. Look at it, particularly what it does to the sky. And that's just from taking the black and white, which is that layer. Here's looking at normal. Nope, that's not normal. Oh, I have the opacity turned down. There's our black and white layer. By changing it to luminosity and then bringing that opacity down, you get a nice little pop to the image. You see there's the before and the after. And it's exactly the same image. And it's a cool thing to do. And you can actually do this in Photoshop itself by not creating a black and white and just creating a black and white layer. But if you do have the Nik filters, I do find that Silver Effects creates stunning black and whites that work really well for this luminosity masking effect. Any questions? Yeah. Okay. Then let's move on. It's time for soup. This isn't really a very soupy image, but it's another lighthouse. But this is the lighthouse that we start our workshop at. We'll be here this coming Monday. This is Scituate Lighthouse, which is technically on the mainland right before you get to Cape Cod. One of the reasons I love this lighthouse is that you can walk around 360 degrees. It's got lots of places to walk. There's also a jetty. And the other part I love about it is it's a faceted lighthouse. It's got 8 sides. So even at high noon, you get dimension on this thing because of the shapes on the lighthouse. So let's go ahead and do some of the basics. In fact, we could try our adaptive color. Let's see if that works with this one. Yeah, it's a start. Excuse me. Let's bring the highlights down a bit. We'll open up the shadows a lot. We'll add some texture clarity. Oh, that's too much. Just a little bit, but it does need vibrance and saturation. And all right, we're starting to get there. So what are the problems? Well, the sky is off. There's too much image here, actually. And the reason I took this when I was here is that I wanted to accentuate this foliage stuff. Because look at 100%. That's pretty cool. And again, this was shot with my OM1s. I'm really impressed with how good Lightroom and Photoshop do with the OM files. There's a slight skewing going on too. Let's go ahead and bring up the crop tool. And want to make sure, I'm just looking at the lighthouse. I'm going to guide so that the lighthouse looks as straight up and down as possible. I'm using the top of the lighthouse tower, and that's good. And there's more than we need here, but we can get rid of that in a second. Let's take a look at the sky first. So let's click on the sky. And for one, it needs some contrast. And I think really needs to be opened up a little bit. And then maybe the shadows brought down. But I think what we're going to have to do is we might have to take this into Photoshop to get it the way I really want. But that's looking pretty good. Before we do that though, let's create a path leading up to the lighthouse. So I'm going to get a brush and I'm going to turn off auto mask because I just want it to go, I want it to hit everything that I go over. So I'm going to just drag up to here and right up to the lighthouse. You'll be thinking, oh man, I just, got all over the place. But what I'm going to do while I'm here is scroll down to subtract, and I'm going to subtract the sky, and I'm going to subtract the subject, which will be the lighthouse tower itself. And look at that, all gone. Now we can just add some brightness, and look what it does. Look at how it now really creates a beautiful path right to the lighthouse. Love it. All right, so again, I do want to crop. I might want to adjust the color of the blue a little bit, but I want to help out the clouds a little bit. So let's send this into Photoshop, and we'll do our final crop and our final vignette back here in Lightroom. So I'm just going to hit Command E to send it into Photoshop, and here it is. And let's see, I'm going to make a copy of the image before I do anything else. Let's select the sky. All right, pretty good job. And now let's select color range. And I want to get the highlights, and that's way too much. So let's bring the fuzziness down. It looks like it's ignoring my selection here, so let's bring the range down. And I can't believe it's selecting that as the highlights. Let's reset that. Let's see. Let's just do sampled colors. Okay, so I want that. There we go. And I'm going to use the plus thing to get up in here. That looks better. And I'm going to subtract the lighthouse. I just want to get the highlights of the cloud selected. So let's hit OK on that. And now let's create a levels adjustment just of this. So if we click on Alt and click on the mask, you can see there is our mask that it created for us. And let's open this up a little bit. I'm going to make the whites just a little bit brighter. Just want to clean them up a little bit. And let's turn that on and off so you can see. See, they were looking a little dingy. That was what I was seeing. I just wanted to add a little bit more brightness to them and not affect anything else. And I think that's looking pretty good. Let's send this back into Photoshop. I'm just going to, or Lightroom rather. I'm just going to hit Command S on this because let's take a look at our finished crop here. So here's our image showing up back in Lightroom. What does it need? Well, it needs to be cropped. So let's hit R. Let's bring it in from the left. Because again, remember, the lighthouse is kind of a secondary subject here. This is really your primary. So let's bring in from the right. I don't want to clip these rocks right here, but even just doing this is enough to make the lighthouse look bigger in the image. So let's hit enter on that, and let's add our vignette, which is going to further center you in the image. Yeah, that looks good. And you know, I think that looks pretty good. Let's look at it at full screen. Yeah, I like that. So let's take a look at our beginning and after. Let's go full screen. There is our raw file. And we took that from there to there. So much more life to it. And as I look at the sky, really, I'm fine with it. But again, when I was taking this picture, this is what I was looking at. And this is why this could make a really cool big image. Because look at the detail and look how great the sharpness of all these rocks are. And you might notice, or if you remember when we were doing our edit, I did no sharpening to this image. This is how Lightroom processed the raw file. So not something that gets talked about. I've talked about it in the newsletter. But not all cameras are the same as far as Lightroom's concerned with its raw conversions, which is why if you're a Fuji shooter, you really need to have Capture One. All right, moving on. Appetizers. Okay. Now, the image that I chose as an appetizer, I don't want to give anybody an upset stomach, but here it comes. Here's our appetizer image. Yes. I don't know if that gives anybody an upset stomach, but personally, I think they're actually cool birds. In fact, Diane and I were talking about this earlier, and I think people would have a lot more respect for pigeons if they were called by their real official bird name, which you've never heard of before. These are called rock doves. That's the real name of a pigeon, but everybody thinks of them as flying rats, at least if you ever spent any time in New York City. But I think they're kind of cool birds. And this was shot with, I think this was shot with the 100 to 400. Let's see. Yeah, this is the 100 to 400 on the OM. And let's bring the shadows up. Oh, that looks great already. Let's bring the highlights down. Actually, let's see. Shadows up a little too far. Highlights down even more. In fact, we're going to bring the exposure down and bring the shadows up. Because I don't want to blow out. So you can see I've got some clipping now on the top of the bird. We don't want that. Oh, because I put the whites way up too high. Let's. I didn't want to move the whites at all. Let's put them back. Okay. Sorry about that. Let's bring the shadows all the way up, and now we can bring our exposure back up. And again, I'm looking at the histogram as I adjust these sliders. And we've got a good exposure everywhere. However, I want to bring some of the details in the blacks back. So we're going to make the blacks a little bit darker. And if we take a zoom in on the bird, that's pretty cool. And it's pretty sharp. We've got a little bit that looks like blowout here, but it's not. So we're going to have to go in and manually take care of that. Also, this, whatever that it's standing on, is too bright. So how can we select that? Probably let's use a linear gradient. So I'm just going to click and drag. It's okay to come into the water a little bit because remember it fades to 0. And let's subtract the subject and see that it sees the bird is the subject. And come on, you got to admit that's cool. All right, let's bring the exposure down and the highlights down on that thing. I think that should be yellower. I mean, it is a wood post of some sort. So let's make it yellower and a little bit darker. I don't want to give it too much saturation because I don't want it to be noticeable that much. I don't want to draw the eye to it. But a lot of that we can fix by doing our crop. All right. There's way too much of the image. What should our crop be? Well, let's do a couple of virtual copies. And let's go back to the first one. And let's hit R for the cropping tool. I'm kind of seeing this as with most of my favorite bird pictures, practically as a portrait. So let's get rid of the stuff on the left. We don't need it all. Let's do about that much. Let's come up from the bottom. Do we want the whole bird is the other question. Or do we just want to do something like this? Let's try that. And we'll see if we can put this rope in the background to use. Something like that. We don't need all of this because it's competing. How about if we do something like this? I find this post or whatever it is it's sitting on to be a bit of a distraction. And I know typically when you have an animal, the area that they're looking to, you want to have open. In this case, that does not work. So we're going to break the rule here and go that way. And that's actually not terrible. I don't know what you guys think. Any question? Let me know in your comments. What do you think about this? Something else I'm going to do before we go any further is we have this bouquet in the background, but it's a little bit grainy and it's got a little bit too sharp an edge for me. So let's fix that. We're going to create a new mask, which is going to be the subject. We just want the bird, and then we're going to invert that. So let's invert that mask. And let's scroll down to effects. And instead of adding texture and clarity, we're going to take it away from the background. So let's bring the clarity way down and look how that blurs that stuff. And in fact, we can even turn down dehaze, which has the opposite effect of creating a haze. And if we want to take it one step further, we can go to detail. And we could turn the sharpening all the way off. You know what? Let's leave that for now. So I do want to darken the rest of the image. So let's get our mask again, which this one, and I'm going to duplicate it, invert it. That gives us back our bird. Oh, actually, I do want this inverted. Now let's take a look at the bird before I do it. I'm going to hit, let's hold on the eyeball here. What does the bird need? You think it needs a little more dehaze or contrast or clarity or something? Let's try it. Let's really make it the star. So I'm going to add a little bit of clarity, a little bit of dehaze, and then we'll have to open up the shadows after doing that. Maybe even the overall exposure. Oh yeah. And let's put some saturation. I mean, they do have this kind of beautiful green and purple going on the chest. Yeah. And look at the eye. Come on, that eye's cool. And let's hit K and go select this little piece. Oh, I forgot you have auto mask turned off. Let's undo that. Let's hit K again and turn auto mask back on. Let's get this area here and let's bring it down. Let's bring the exposure down to put it back in that light gray that it really is. That's good. All right, one more time. Let's get this mask that we already had done. This is the background, so we can see that. And let's bring the exposure down a little bit on that. Yeah, that's better. And I think adding a vignette to this, let's go to our effects, adding our vignette. And one more thing. Let's hit K again. And let's just open that part of the bird up a little bit. Let's add a little, whoops. I still have a mask on, sorry. Let's start that again. Add a little bit of exposure in there just to bring up those great colors. And then maybe also bring the blacks down. That'll add a nice bit of contrast and pop to it. And I like it. Let's hit enter on all that. And let's make one virtual copy of this and just see if we want to get in closer. I think the bouquet off in the background is a nice effect for this. Let's see. Do we want the whole bird? No. No. He looks better that way. So let's just do that. I'm going to come in off the top a little bit. Maybe come in here. And yeah, there we go. think he looks majestic, which pigeons don't get much love. So let's take a look where we started. Let's go full screen here. There's the original raw file. And here's our first edit. And come on, that's cool. That's a cool enough picture of a pigeon that I would actually print that and hang that. Something about the face and the eye, it just... there's a smiling and there's a confidence to it. It's a confident bird. Okay, any questions on that? No questions? You guys are quiet tonight. All right. It's time for the main course. And for the main course, we are going to do a panoramic. So let's see.
Alyssa says you're getting into birds, Joe.
I'm getting into birds, Alyssa says. Don't get me wrong. I love birds. It's the birds in flight birder thing that is not for me. But to me, a picture of a bird like that, this to me, where's the zoom in we just did? To me, that's a portrait. You know, the fact that it's an animal doesn't matter, be it a bird or a bison or an elk or what have you. To me, this is just, if it's got eyes, that's a portrait. So I would not, if you wanted to say I am a bird portrait photographer, yeah, all right, I'll buy that. Okay, so here we have a bunch of shots of brain freeze. What's this light called? Highland. Sorry, Highland light, and also on Cape Cod. And I did some basic edits for it. I don't know that I want to waste your time on them because I got other fun stuff to do. So here is the edits that were done to the image. We can take a look and see it's the standard. Highlights all the way down, shadows all the way up, exposure up a little bit, presence and vibrance and saturation. And then that was applied to all the images. So let's get all of the shots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we can go through them. If you see, even that one that's pretty skewed. Let's see how good a job Lightroom can do putting this whole thing together. So we'll go to Photo Merge, Panorama. I'm pretty sure the fact that that one piece of the lighthouse is so skewed that I must have shot this without my tripod. And yeah. But look what Lightroom did for it. It really did an amazing job. Do I need to do anything to the crop? There's some rotation it needs. Could I fill in the outside? Yeah, but there's already more than I need for this image. So I could try the boundary warp. Let's see what that does. That makes the distortion up here a little worse, actually. So, yeah, I think that way with the image rotated is going to be better. So let's just go ahead and click on Merge for that. And we'll see what we can do with this. There's one thing I noticed about the lighthouse that's going to be needed to be fixed in Photoshop. And we'll take a look at that as soon as it's done creating it here. Okay, here is our stuck together, our merged image. Let's hit the R tool for cropping. And let's rotate to see if we can get the lighthouse straight. And once again, I'm looking at the walkway around where the lens is, and I want to make sure that line is straight. And now it is. The slight, however, is look at the building. The building is not quite. So let's see. It's going to be easier to fix the lighthouse than the building. So I'm adjusting this so that right across the building, we know that's straight. If the lighthouse is skewed a little bit, which it is, we'll deal with that. Do I really need this stuff over on the far right? And do I need that much sky? No, I say something like that's more than enough. And we'll keep that still more than we need, but let's just hit enter on that. Okay, so the lighthouse tower is a little bit skewed. We're going to have to fix that in Photoshop. Is there anything else we want to do while we're here? And I would say yes. This entire foreground is a little bit too dark. Let's see if the landscape filter will give us what we want. Let's see what it calls it. It called it mountains on that last lighthouse. Now it's vegetation. Okay, well, that's fine. So let's create a mask for the vegetation, and let's bring up the exposure. And the question is it a little too yellow? Let's see if it make it a little bluer. Now, actually, the yellow, I think, does add some warmth to it. Let's open the shadows, add some contrast, and add a little more brightness. Because what I want to do is I want to separate out the lighthouse from the foreground and give it a little more dimension by making the lighthouse cooler, bluer. Because this is looking a little bit dingy, just a little bit. So let's go ahead and create a new mask and select subject. And again, pretty amazing what this thing does. Let's add a little bit of blue to it. See how that cleans it up? Just that much blue. And again, notice how much separation there is from the foreground. The thing is really becoming three-dimensional. And this kind of masking stuff is one of the things that Lightroom is better at than Photoshop. I wish Photoshop would catch up with this. Now, the sky's a little too dark. Let's fix that while we're here. Let's add the sky. And let's see, contrast. Let's bring the highlights up. I want those highlights to pop. Yeah, that's better. Don't like the blue. So let's fix that. We'll hit enter on these masks. Let's get the color mixer and go up to this blue. And yeah, I don't like it. But I don't want it to be too dark either. So what I'm going to do is pull down the saturation a little bit and add a little luminance to it. So we move the hue over to get it to more of a neutral blue. Okay, that looks better. Now there's some light painting I want to do on this image as well. Before we do that, there's this one sign over here that's minorly annoying. Now this is the kind of thing that generative AI is kind of a waste of time with. Just use the old spot removal tool. We'll just drag over this and get rid of that thing, and it did a perfect job of that. Okay, so that's gone. So we'll zoom out, and before we go deal with the lighthouse. Now the lighthouse doesn't look terribly bent, but it's leaning a little bit in on the towards the left. So let's send this into Photoshop and fix that, and then we'll do our last bit of light painting back here in Lightroom. Okay, so Command J to make a copy of this. Yeah, the lighthouse has got two things going on. There's a very slight bend to it. If you can see, it's slightly curving to the left. And also we're looking up at it, so it actually looks like it's frowning. Doesn't it? Look at the walkways. Look at this one right here and this one right here. It's like it's sad. So let's see if we can help it out. So I'm going to use the lasso tool, and the bottom of it's fine. Let's select all this up here. And I'm going to copy and paste, Command C, Command V, and put that on its own layer. So there's what's on that layer. So let's select that and go to Edit, Transform, Warp. And there's our warp grid. And as I mentioned, it's slightly skewed. So let's just get the top and bring it over a smidge. And let's see. Do you see these walkways right here? I'm just going to drag the walkway down. I'm going to flatten this thing out a little bit. Yes, it's getting shorter. We're going to fix that in a second. But I want to flatten out the walkway so it doesn't look like it's so sad. Yes, that looks so much better. And now I'm going to hit Command T again, which is free transform. And in fact, I'm going to turn the opacity down a bit so we can see where the lighthouse was. Hold down the Shift key and drag this back up. In fact, I'm going to cheat a little bit. Don't tell anybody. I'm going to make it a little taller than it was, because I want it to be happy. All right, let's put our opacity back, and look at that. Watch when we turn this on and off to see what we just did. Look, it looks actually like it's leaning backwards from where we're standing, and now it looks straighter, and it looks happier. It's smiling now. Yes, we have a break in the sky. You can see where the sky doesn't line up anymore. So let's create a mask and get our brush. And I want to brush about, let's see. Let's make it a soft brush. Let's make it about that big. And what I'm going to do is hide the other layers so I can see the edge. Click on the mask. I've got black. I'm going to work it 80%. So I'm going to hit 8 on my keyboard. And you see it changes to 80 up there. And let's go ahead and just get around these edges. And now we'll turn the layer below on again. And now let's turn it on and off and see if there's any places we actually see a break. And even though it's moving, I'm not seeing a bad break, but let's go ahead and I'm going to go to 100%. Let's just fix a couple of these spots that are kind of close. It's okay that down below is breaking a little bit because it's not breaking, it's just moving. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And doesn't that lighthouse look better? Come on, look at that. There's the before. And it's the kind of thing that you might not even have noticed until you saw it fixed. And look how much straighter. And it's like, when we were kids and our parents used to say, sit up straight at the dinner table. There you go. Look, there's a slouching lighthouse. There's a happier straight up and down lighthouse. All right, Joe's losing his mind. While we're here, you know what? Let's do our burning and dodging here in Photoshop. As long as we're here, let's create a new layer. Down by clicking the box here with the plus symbol in it, I'm going to, since I'm going to do both highlights and shadows, I'm going to go to Edit Fill, and I'm going to fill this with 50% gray. And there's our 50% gray layer, which we're going to change to overlay. And again, if you've missed this in the past, the way overlay works is anything on the layer that is brighter than 50% gray will lighten the layer below. Anything that is darker will darken the image below. And if it's 50% gray, it's transparent. So if I want to brighten up in here a little bit, what I can do is get myself a nice big brush. I'm going to hit D to put black, give me black and white. I want to brighten up the grass here, so I hit X. And I just want to work at 10%. So I'm going to hit 1 on my keyboard and notice that the opacity changed to 10. And let's just brighten up these areas, kind of leading to the lighthouse. I'm going to glue the side of the building a little bit too. And actually up in the tree, I'm going to lighten up these trees a little bit. And yeah, maybe right up in here as well. And it's a cumulative effect, by the way. So if you keep doing it, it will keep adding to it. Now I'm going to hit X to put black in the foreground. And see this little part that's darker here? I want it to get darker. So let's go ahead and take these areas that are dark, make them a little bit darker. And even right along here. And right there. So I'm making the things that were darker, darker, and the things that were a little lighter, a little lighter. And does it look like I did anything? Well, watch what happens when we turn this on or hide this. Look at the before and after. There's the before, there's the after. See the difference in the image and where you're led. Big difference. All right, let's save this. Command S, send this back into Lightroom for our final crop and vignette. Because we got some dessert to get to too. Let's see. All right, back in Lightroom. And here it comes. All right, do I want a little more pop to this? A little more saturation? Maybe. In fact, gee, let's send this into Viveza. I can't help it. It looks like it would really benefit. So let's go back to Nix Viveza again. As I mentioned before, I don't currently have any official affiliation with them, but their software is just the coolest thing for landscape photography. So structure, I mean, yeah, you can just see right away. Warmth, let's see if the warmth change will help. Doesn't want to be cooler. Yeah, maybe maybe a very couple percent of warmth there. And I could also add some local structure. Now, I don't want to get that deep into it. Actually, this is fine. Look at the before and after. Look how it's separated out the clouds in the sky. And it just added that little bit of clarity to the entire image. And face it, the Nix stuff does it better than Lightroom's clarity does. And now we can add our vignette. And then let's take a look and decide, gee, where does the crop need to be on this? Personally, I see this as a little bit of a more panoramic, so let's hit the crop tool. I'm thinking about this much. You do need to have enough base underneath something like this. Think of this as a sculpture. There needs to be enough base to support what's above it. If you were to do something like that, that does not work. You need to have enough. But you don't need too much, because then it becomes about the foreground. So I'm going to split the difference and say about right there. And I'm going to bring it down from the top. I like this tree here. Maybe I'll bring it in a little bit. Nope, I like that tree too much. Do I need that much on the left? Maybe not. Let's do this, because it will make the lighthouse bigger in the frame. And that's, again, that's the key, because that's what's important in here. And let's add a little bit of contrast. I'm actually going to bring the shadows down a little bit more. Maybe actually bring the exposure down a smidge. Just a smidge. Actually, I ended up bringing it up a smidge. Okay. So again, let's see. Where's our starting point? Where'd our pano go? The original pano. Oh, I guess I had already cropped it. All right, we'll just look at these two. So there's our original. Look at the lighthouse, and there's the after. And then where's our crop? Right here. Yeah, let's do all three of those, because that's important to see what happened. Okay, so there's our original. Again, look at the lighthouse. You might think, oh, it looks fine, but it does appear to be leaning slightly in and slightly back. And look how much straighter everything looks that way. Plus, with a little bit of light painting, we created more as if the sun was coming through the clouds, a little bit ripply, and adding some more foreground depth by having those shadows and highlights. And then lastly, the final crop. Notice by doing that, look at how much bigger the lighthouse is in the scene. You still get a sense of the place, but now the lighthouse is really front and center. Compared to that, the lighthouse has so much more impact. And that's really important. You gotta figure out the cropping that is gonna mostly benefit the subject. All right, any questions?
No.
You guys are really quiet tonight. It's time for dessert. I got a couple of desserts here. You want 2 desserts tonight?
Who wouldn't?
Who wouldn't? All right. Okay. Oh, you're going to love the second dessert. I'm going to save that for last. Okay. This is in Oxford University. It's a part of the buildings that is locally known as the Bridge of Sighs, which is really a place in Venice. I'll show you the two of them together. And yeah, you can see it was kind of a cloudy, had drizzled a little bit earlier. Is there a way to fix this? Also, the perspective's off a little bit. Let's see what we can do. Let's just do the basics. Let's bring the highlights all the way down, because look, there are clouds. They were there. So let's bring up the shadows. We're going to need a bunch of texture clarity here. We're going to need a bunch of saturation, because these buildings are actually pretty yellow, the stone here. All right, that's looking better. We're still going to have to work on some perspective stuff. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's scroll down and go to transform. And yeah, there's a lot of problems. You can see the buildings are leaning in. They're falling in a little bit. So let's go to vertical and straighten that out. Still didn't quite do it right. It did it. If I do the left, the right's not quite right. So let's use the horizontal transform and see if we can. Look at that. Look how it straightens it out. It's almost as if we moved a couple of steps. I think there. And we can move over to the left a little bit and bring that down. And let's take a look at the rotation also. We want to make sure that the bridge is straight. So what I'm doing is I'm looking right here and right here, because if this thing's level, they should be in line. So when we click on the rotation, you can see they are. So that is saying now that the bridge is straight. It is very slightly off center, and this is one of those things that it has symmetry in it, so we need to make it centered. Now, right from the start, is there any reason to keep the foreground? There's nothing going on there. It's just street. So let's bring that up, and I just want to make sure that I don't put anything exactly in the corners. So if, for example, if I were to do that, this curb line leads you to the corner. If I were to do this, that little yellow stripe there leads you exactly to the corner. So it's got to either be in between those two or just come up. And let's come down a bit. And as we do this, what's it starting to look like? A square. Let's just see how a 101 is. Yeah, it's a square. So that's an appropriate cropping for this image. So let's go ahead and do that. All right. So down below, it's a little bit on the dark side. Let's just use a linear gradient and open that up a smidge. And let's do the sky. We'll create new mask and do the sky. The sky actually needs to be a little darker, a little more dehazy, because it had been raining earlier, although you can't see it on the street right now. All right, now the actual building or the actual structure itself. Let's see if I haven't tried this. Let's see if the Lightroom decides the bridge is the subject. And not too bad. We need to add to it though. So let's get a brush. Make sure auto mask is on. It is. And let's add this piece over here. And yeah, that's good. We want to bring this up a little bit. Yeah, that's better. And also, almost like Mesa Arch and Canyonlands, there's a different color brick underneath that we want to bring out. I'm going to make the blacks a little blacker. And let's hit K, a little smaller brush, and let's see if we can isolate out this orange here. Hold down the Alt to turn that into minus. And let's warm these things up. Let's add a little bit of yellow. That's better. A little magenta. And let's open up the exposure a bit and the saturation. And that's looking pretty good. Now, it wasn't a bright sunny day. This is the foliage in the back is maybe a little bit too bright. Let's go ahead and select that. Let's darken this stuff over here. All right. And then there's another thing going on. There's too many annoying tourists. Some of them have to go. So we're going to AI these people. Let's get rid of these couple right here with your white trainers, as the Brits call them. They got to go. Yeah, let's just remove them. And this cluster right here, the girl riding her bike off in the distance, she can stay. She's probably a student, so she's okay there. Let's see. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 1's the best. So 1's pretty good, so we'll go with that. And let's zoom in to get rid of these people. Yeah, they annoy me. Let's just get rid of them. We'll see if we can leave that little post there. All right. And see, it adds the post to it. So I'm going to subtract that from what it's selected because I want to make sure that doesn't get taken away. And now let's click on remove and see how good a job it does from that. And actually made the post taller. Let's make it, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Huh. All right, we're going to go with that. I would probably get rid of it, but that's fine. All right, so this definitely needs a vignette. So let's go to Effects and add a vignette to that. And let's make a virtual copy of that because I'm going to reset one so you can see where we started. Let's reset it. You might have forgotten already. There is the raw file. And this is kind of an iconic place. If any of you were ever fans of the British TV shows, Morse or Inspector Lewis, both, or Endeavour, all those shows take place in Oxford, and this is a place that you see all the time.
Gloria has a question.
Yes, Gloria, question.
What about the windows on the right side?
The windows on the right side are bothering Gloria somehow. The right side of the bridge or the building?
When I'm looking at the photo, the right side.
The right side of the bridge?
No, the building.
Oh, the building. Well, so one of these windows bothers you?
Well, you cut some off and you don't cut some off. So should you cut them off or not?
I chose not to because I wanted to make it about the bridge. These are very old buildings, so they're not all straight up and down. So I was that concerned, not that concerned about it. If it had bothered me when I was taking it, I probably would have paid more attention to that. But that's something to consider. But I needed the bridge to be dead center. I needed it to be symmetrical because of the way the structure is made and the way I did capture the photographs. So I wouldn't say it, but it doesn't bother me enough that I find it a distraction.
Okey dokey.
Okay. And just as a comparison,
Is the building curved?
the building is curved, yes. See the building here? Yeah, the building is curved around the sidewalk. That is how the building is made. Just so you can see, so this is the Oxford building, and it's just between two buildings in the same college. And then this is the real Bridge of Sighs in Venice. Reason it's called that is because the theory is this is the Doge's Palace in Venice, which is where the Duke lived. He was the ruler of Venice. This is the jail. And after you were convicted of something, you took the walk past these windows, and people were said to have gone, that's it. That's the last I'm going to see of the beauty of Venice, because you're going to be spending a lot of time down in here, which is the jail. And because it kind of resembled this place in Venice, this bridge became known locally as the Bridge of Sighs in Oxford. Okay, let's have some fun. All right, this is Trafalgar Square in London. And right behind me when I took this is the National Gallery. And if you look way off from there, there's Big Ben. And the exposure is honestly pretty much as good as it can be. I could have maybe pushed it a little bit more. But if you look at the highlights, this histogram is getting very close to the edge. And if we go over the clouds, although as bright as they look on the screen, yeah, we're in the low 90s, which means there's plenty of room to bring this down. There's also the tip of a crane here. We've also got some slight distortion. So let's do the basics first. You know what's coming, the highlights, shadows, and texture clarity, vibrance, saturation, and we're looking better already. Now the sky looks great. You can even bring it down a little bit. The foreground is a little in shadow, which it probably partially was. Not as bright as sun is off in the distance. So let's go ahead and select the sky and then invert it, because we want all this stuff to get brighter. So let's bring up the exposure and let's add a little bit of warmth to it. So I'm going to add a little bit of yellow into the stone, and we need to straighten this whole thing out. So let's just bring up the R tool first and get the column straight, because that's important. And we'll bring in from the left and the right a little bit. I don't really need all of this. I want to get rid of that person. So now we've got Nelson. This is Nelson's column in Trafalgar Square, and it needs some stuff in Photoshop. But before we do this, let's go to detail. Let's come in and look and see here. Let's add some sharpening and hold down the Alt or Option key and drag this over so that we only get the edges of stuff to sharpen. And I am going to denoise this. So let's click on denoise, because I want this to be the cleanest it can be. And you can see there's the before and after with the noise, which you'd see more in the sky. Again, it's cheating because it's that's showing you at 300%, but it does clean things up quite nicely, because there's something really cool we're going to do in Photoshop to this image as soon as it's done being denoised. Now, when this is done, it actually does create a new file. And I'm not sure exactly what's happening, because it creates a DNG. So it is still a raw file. And if you look at the sliders, we can go back to the basics, and all the sliders are right where we had put them before. So kind of interesting. All right, let's choose subject. I want to see if it picks up the column. Yes, let's just brighten that up a little bit more. And what the color wise? Yeah, nah, it's actually kind of okay. Now, when we did do that clarity stuff, we did create a little bit of a halo. You see it right here on the left edge that we're going to fix. We're going to fix that in Photoshop. So let's send this into Photoshop. Command E. All right. So Command J to create a copy of that. Let's zoom in on the side of the column here. And I want to fix these halos that have happened because of the clarity slider. And to do that, we're going to use the stamp tool, which is right here, or the cloning brush. And we're going to change this blending mode to darken. And because what that's going to allow us to do is get a little, I just want to get a little brush, make it a little bit bigger, maybe about like that. And I'm going to sample by clicking on Alt. And watch, since I'm on darken, it's only going to darken from where I sample from. The column itself is already darker than everything else. So watch what happens as I go along here. It takes out the halo. Now if I want to do it all the way down, what I can do is Alt click right here on the column. Notice it's not affecting the column because it's already darker. But then I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom of the column, hold down the Shift key, click once, and it does a complete straight line all the way down, and you can see it's gone. Now while we're at it, and again we can zoom in some more here, let's do the same thing here. Hold down Alt, and notice as I come around, see how it just gets rid of that little bit of highlight, got a little bit of fringing right there. But we're looking at it at 200%. I doubt it would show up. And also in here, right underneath the sculpture's arms and around here, we can get rid of these halos that are being caused. But the thing itself doesn't get affected because it's already darker than the thing we're painting with. And we'll do over here as well. And I do see I'm having a little bit of chromatic. Let me see if it shows up at 100%.
Yeah, we want you to repeat that process.
Okay, so Gloria wants us to see that again. So let's do it over here on this side. It's kind of hard to, maybe it doesn't need it as much. We'll make believe. Let's come down the very bottom. Is there a spot I missed? What are these things? Oh, they're the anti-pigeon things. They really hate they really hate pigeons. Let's see. Is there somewhere else where we've got halos that we can get rid of? Yeah, a little bit here on the top of this building. We're really pushing it here, but so again, what you do, choose the cloning brush, change the blending mode from normal to darken, get yourself a smallish brush, and hold down on a Mac it's Alt, Windows it should be Option, and just click near the thing. Now, since the thing underneath it that the halo is around is darker, it's not going to be affected because it's already darker than this. So if I come in there and just start painting along that, all of that stuff disappears. And it pays to follow whatever it is that you've got there. And you can see all that stuff goes away. Now we're at 400%, but you can kind of see one right here as well. So Gloria, is this making sense? You getting this? You're muted. Type it in.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just trying to get the process down because I've never done this one before.
Okay, so stamp tool. Change the blending mode to darken. And I'm going to Alt click to sample with this tool because that's what basically fills the tool with the color. I'm going to sample with this part of the image, and then I'm going to come over here, and since these are straight lines, I can just hold the Shift key, click once, and it does the entire thing in a straight line up the image. If it's not a straight line, then you got to drag like this. But if it's straight, you can, like that column, you can just do the whole thing in one fell swoop. And we go back to 100%. Okay, but we're not done. Now for the fun stuff. Okay, it's too peoply here. When I first looked at this, I thought, well, let's see. this shopping cart's got to go. These people are a distraction. Yeah, let's get rid of them, and let's get rid of the shopping cart. And is this something we need to AI, or can just content aware Phil get rid of it? Let's find out. Function Shift F5. Remember, we were using 50% gray. We got to change it back to content aware. And let's see if that gets rid of those two. And no, actually it doesn't. It fails. It did okay with these two ladies right here and their shadow. So let's go ahead and Function Shift F5 to fill them. That works fine. For the shopping cart, because of the stuff around it, we're going to have to AI this. In fact, yeah, let's just AI that. So I click on Generative Fill, Generate, and because I want to maintain the different colored stones on this plaza here. So let's see what Photoshop can do for us. And all right, there's 1, 2, 3. 2's better. Okay, so 2 does that. So I'm going to select these 2 layers and Command E to flatten them. This annoying child's got to go. You got to go. And I don't know what this thing, this woman, and I hold down the Shift key to add to that. This, whatever this is got to go. And I think that would be enough to make me happy, but maybe not. So let's get rid of those 2. Oh, I left out that one head there. Oh, that's more easily done with content aware. So if content aware works, use it. The generative fill isn't always necessary. Now, that's pretty cool. All right, let's get rid of that one head. We'll just use content aware because it's a lot faster. Function Shift F5. Oops. Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. I forgot to merge those. Okay, now let's do that. Function Shift F5. Okay, that head's gone. Now, as I look at that, it was a very people-y day. If you've ever been to Britain on a bank holiday, this was a bank holiday. And the Brits, man, they go out and see stuff on bank holidays. There's way too many people. I want to get rid of all of them. Let's do that. So see this tool right here, this one right here, the Band-Aid. If I click on that, there's a thing up here called Find Distractions. If I click on there, oh look, people. Let's see. Let's look at the software found all the people in the image that quickly. That's pretty amazing. Now, I think it would look. I know it would look really weird if I got rid of everybody. It would look like the zombie apocalypse has happened. So we have the ability to subtract from these things. So this button right here, I'm going to change it to subtract. And I'm going to take away this guy. I'm going to leave him here. He's not bothering anybody. He's looking off in the distance. Let's get rid of him there. And now let's click on the check mark. And let's see what Photoshop can do with all these annoying people out on bank holiday. And wait for it. Come on, you can do it. How amazing is that? Got rid of almost everybody. Actually missed a couple of people over here. But that's pretty amazing. Now, this guy has got some weird thing going on over top of him. I don't know what the hell that is. So we're going to just draw around him. This is going to need a generative AI. And I don't know what happened there. Some kind of weird thing there. All right, so let's generative fill that. And see if we can get rid of everybody except for this one dude who's looking off in the distance. Let's see if generative AI will get rid of that strangeness. Et voila. There you go. And let's zoom in over here. I think there are some people. Wow, there's some people that didn't really actually survive. There's some weirdnesses going on over here. Yeah, they were transformed into something else. So, yeah, I can't leave that go. Let's get rid of that one. Yeah, that's almost worse than the llama appearing in the church last week. All right, we'll just function. We'll just see if Content aware will get rid of these guys. Oh, I have to do it on the layer. Let's see if content aware will get rid of. Yeah, it's better. And what is this? I'm sorry. Look at this thing. What the heck happened there? There's some weirdness here. It's not perfect, but it allows you to then go in and fix stuff. So whatever zombie disease happened here. There we go. Okay. And again, we're looking at this at 300%. So when we go back to 0. So there we go. Look, there's what we started with. And look, they're all gone. Come on, that's pretty cool. And we'll save that. It's a fun tool. This is the same tool, by the way, you use if you want to get rid of power lines. It will actually, I've used this before. I've done some demos with it. It'll just find all the power lines and get rid of them for you. Stuff that used to take hours in the past, you can now do with a couple of clicks, which is pretty impressive. All right, back over to Lightroom. And we'll take a look. Our path through this stuff. There's the raw file we started with. There's the color fix. And there's everybody gone except for the one dude. Pretty cool. Again, stuff that would take forever. But it was Diane, by the way, I have to give credit where credit's due. Diane thought it'd be cool to leave this guy here. And I said, oh, you're so right about that. And I'd probably crop this. I would probably maybe take this in a little further. I don't know. Really kind of make him by himself. Something like that, and add a vignette. More a fun example of what you can do. Not that I'm going to hang this up or anything. This was a documentary photograph just to show the crowds on a bank holiday in Great Britain. But still, cool stuff. And there we go. Any questions? Guys can unmute if you have any questions at this point. Where did he go? Okay. Can I move the man? Of course I can. Let's see. Yep, good catch. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm just going to draw around him. Get his shadow as well. And where did they hide the tool? Content aware move. I'll know the tool. There it is right here. Do that and hit enter. And what it does is it moves him and eliminates the one you started with. How cool is that? Yeah, it's the content aware move tool. I haven't found myself using that much in years, but yeah, that's what it does. Good question though. Any other questions?
For the vignettes, do you usually use around -10 or?
Yeah, -10, -12 is my go-to because I like it. You know what? Let's take a look. Let's do a vignette on another image. I'll show you another. This is actually another one in the same place that I did some similar kind of stuff to. This is actually the raw file. And these people were bothering me, so I got rid of them. But let's take a look at vignette. So I'm going to reset this. There's no vignette at all. Now, sometimes it's hard to see exactly what's going on. So if you bring the amount to 100% or -100%, you get to see what the vignette is. At this point, you can decide if you want it just in the corners or do you want it more square. Something maybe like that. And then how far do you want the midpoint? How far in do you want it to go? You get to do something like that. I'm not saying I'm loving that. I kind of prefer typically something like that. And then how far is the feather going in? You can make it like hard like that or just do here. But figure out what it is, the area that you want. In fact, as I do this, I think I'm going to do that, something like that. And then once I have that, then I'll back this off to my -12 or so. And you look at it, look to see what I find helps for me is I look at the screen, but I don't look right at the image. I actually look over to the menus so I can see it happening out of the corner of my eye. And when when out of the corner of my eye, I'm starting to see the darkening, that's the number. And you can see right at 11 or 12 was where it worked. And when we turn it on and off, you can see it's subtle, but it's enough to give that effect. You can't even really tell there's a vignette, but if I took it away, you'd notice it. And it has a subliminal effect of keeping it from leaving the image. Any other questions? That's it? Yeah, it's almost 9 o'clock. Okay. I have never successfully gotten one of these episodes done in the allotted time of an hour, but that's okay. I like hanging out with you guys. If there are no more questions, then I will say goodnight. Got to prepare for Friday for my lovely wife's birthday, her official birthday of the birthday month. And again, until the national holiday gets made. So look for the newsletters. There's a bunch of stuff coming both on Friday and Monday, and we will be up in Cape Cod all next week. And I look forward to having some new stuff to share with you, because with the people that are joining there, we're going to get the iconic stuff, but I'd like to see what we can do to create something really unique in the places we visit, not the standard look. So I want to find a new way to capture some of these lighthouses and seashore spots we visit. So until next time, when is our next time? I have no idea. Diane's bringing it up. I can bring the calendar up. Hold on one second. Let's see. What month? It's June, right? Yeah, okay. The 25th. So June 25th, we will be back, and hopefully I have a bunch of, hopefully I will. I'll have a bunch of new stuff for you then, because we've got 2 workshops coming up. As you can see, I'll bring my calendar up. So you can see from our calendar, we've got Cape Cod next week, and then the following week we have the waterfalls. And of course you can see not once but twice it shows up on the calendar that it's Diane's birthday on Friday. So happy birthday to my lovely wife. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining me. If you have no more questions, then I will call it an evening. Wish you a great couple of weeks, and I will see you again on the 25th. Thanks for joining me. Good night, everyone.